Hi everyone, and welcome to this new session of Angular Global Meetup, presented to you by This.media. I'm going to be your presenter today, your host. My name is Daniel Marin, and for everyone that doesn't know me, I'm a software engineer. I'm always collaborating with This.dot, so you probably see me in another of the events. I just want to remind before we start that, well, our sponsor, as I said, is This.labs. This.labs is your partners in modern digital transformation. They do everything from mentorship, consulting, staff augmentation, and for enterprise organization. So if you're interested and you want to find out more, you can always go to this.labs or handle in Twitter, or you can also go to this.labs.com and find out more about us. And some announcements we have coming soon. Woo, we're very excited about it. We have the JavaScript Marathon coming soon. That's a whole day of JavaScript. So if you want to learn JavaScript, that's going to be a very, very, very good opportunity for you. We also have the monthly mentoring session, One Minute Tech. I've heard those are amazing, so you can always join those events. We have also, as we do Angular meetups, we also do React, we also do Vue. The next one coming is a global Vue meetup on December 17th. So if Vue is what moves your boat, then you probably want to be there. Those are also very nice. So I highly recommend you to join there. And if you want to find out more about the events, podcasts, articles, and much more, you can always go to this.media handle in Twitter and find out more about it. We have two awesome speakers today. So we have Omoiki Sara, she's a software engineer, and we have GLE, he's also a senior software engineer. And after I'm just finished talking to you and boring you with these details, I'm gonna leave it up to them to talk. We're gonna have Sara first. She's gonna talk about form validation using reactive forms. And then we're gonna have Gia talking about learn Zone.js by examples. This is gonna be a really good session. I hope you're excited as we are. So that's it from me. And up to you, Sara.
Oh, hi. So I'll be talking about form validation using reactive forms. So I'm going to share my screen in a few minutes. Okay, so in a few minutes, I'm talking about basically how to validate your forms using reactive and reactive forms. So sit back and enjoy. Um, a few bits about me. So I'm a software engineer in at Titan Trust Bank, a bank, one of the leading banks in Nigeria. So on a daily basis, I solve problems, I write instructions. I'm also a product designer. I'm also the co-founder for Lagos WILDF, that's Lagos Women in Machine Learning and Data Science. So we are basically a group of women who are helping to newbies coming into the field of, in general, tech in Nigerian ecosystem. I'm also a writer. I write articles on Code Like a Girl. So when I'm not writing codes or designing, basically changing the experience. So that's a bit about me. My Twitter handle is on the screen. LinkedIn also, you can connect with me. Very open to chat about anything related to tech. So, form validation using Angular reactive forms. Well, first of all, what is a form? I would assume that I would want to start from the ground knowledge, basically the basics. So I'll throw a little bit of light on what a form is. So what a form actually? A form is basically it's where input fields where users enter details, required details to basically using gathering data for the application. And that's just a layman understanding of a form. So on my next example, I'm going to show you an example of a form on the screen. You can see this is just a simple sign-up form that has your first name, your last name, account number, and where you upload your passport, assuming you have these form fields. So forms are one of HTML tags also enclosed in HTML tag elements. The form elements specify the communication endpoint, the data entered into. What it means is, so it takes the data. So as you can see on the screen, an example of a form where you are required to put in your first name, your last name, your account number, assuming this is the form that was entered to you. So what I'll be talking on basically is how do you validate these forms as a front-end engineer before it gets to the backend, assuming you're submitting the details or the form to the backend using Angular Reactive forms. So there are other, I think there's Formic. The other, that's for React, yes. There are other forms that you can use though, but for Angular, I use Angular on a daily basis. I use Angular 11, yeah, Angular 11 just came out, so that's basically what I use on a daily basis. So how do you validate these forms when you're using reactive forms? So you could use there's a two approach to Angular forms. There's reactive forms. You could use reactive forms. You could use the template forms. So I'll be talking on reactive forms basically. So reactive forms, they typically provide they provide two ways of grouping multiple related controls into a single input form. So what it means is, so on my slides, actually, I have like a step-by-step approach to how you can validate your forms using reactive forms. But I would love to give an introductory talk on what reactive forms, like an overview on what reactive forms are. So so reactive forms are basically asynchronous in nature. What it means is, so if you're having, what it means is it's basically listening to changes on the inputs. As the user is inputting data into the field, like I showed in the, assuming this is your form field, as the user is inputting data into the field, it checks for whatever data you're inputting. And reactive forms are also immutable. What this means is it's not modifiable, it doesn't change. So that's basically an overview of what reactive forms are. So, and just a minute, I want to bring up my code screen. Okay. So I'll do that after the talk. So validation is an integral part of managing any set of forms, right? Whether you're checking the required fields, querying an external API for existing validation, Angular provides built-in validators as well as ability to create custom validators. Yes, reactive forms they define custom validators as functions that receive control to user inputs, to validate user inputs. So that's so your validator functions could be async validators or sync validators in Angular reactive forms. So how do you add validators to your reactive forms? Step one is to import the reactive forms model from the Angular forms package and include it in your models import array. So what I did was, as I'm doing the step-by-step approach, I also added a code sample snippet on how to do this. So if you look at you have your forms model package that has been imported on, oh, I should have added lines here. So reactive forms module, then you add it to your import array. You check on the first, the second import package is the reactive forms module. You also have to import your forms module also when you're doing this. So step two, you import the form group, form builder, and validator classes, from from the packaging or component. So in the form group instance basically tracks the form state of a form of a group of form control instances. Each control in a form group instance is tracked by name when creating the form group. The following, I have a few examples here in this presentation that shows you how to do this. So these are form controls. They are collected in the group. That's the form group. The form group instance provides a model. There's a model that comes. So I'm using the example I'm using in this presentation is a simple signing form as shown in the sample form here. So I have a form group where I'm collecting. I have a model of input fields that the user is required to fill in. So what the form group does is it provides its model value has as an object reduced from the values of each control in the group. A form group stance has the same properties such as value, untouched, and method as set value as some control. A form group basically tracks the status and changes for each of its control. And so if one of the control changes, the parent control also emits a new status or value change. So that's like a little intro on what the form group and does in the Angular Forms package. So this is the step 2. You import the form builder later. So I'm not using the form control because I build applications that requires lots of forms. So I prefer to use the form group, which is a collection of controls. Yes. So the next step is to separate is reject the form builder service. I'll show that in the next. So doing dependency injection, yeah, for the form builder service constructor. Then step 4, you create the sign-in form. And this is a simple sign-in form as an example of how to validate the form using reactive forms. So you create the sign-in form control using the group method. So here on step 4, you have, so I have my, I have an init sign-in form function with the sign-in form group that has the key value pairs of first name, last name, city, and email. So step 5 is, so sorry, I have to go back. So you use the group method with the same object to define the properties in the model. Like I said, the model here is the first name, last name, the city. I hope I'm not too fast. The model here is the last name, the city, and the email. That's the model in the signing form group object. So the value of each control is an array containing the initial value as the first item in the array. So the value that the user would input as shown in the init signing form function that I'm calling in my engine in here is the first item in the array. So I'm going to show how to add the validator functions in your form group object model. Yes. So the next step is to group the nested form in the template using the form group as I explained previously. Form class and add form controlling directly to all input elements, referencing the key in the form builder model. Yeah, so I showed that in the next slide. So what this means is, so on every input you have the form controlling class referencing the key. The key is the required input. Whatever information you are asking the user to input. In this example, I'm asking the user to input the first name, last name, and the age. And so those are the contents of the form control name. So if you look at the form tag, there's a reference. I'm referencing the sign-in form. So I'm using the form group. I'm using an attribute to reference the form group class. So just a minute, I'm going back. So the form group class to reference the key in the form builder model. So step 6, you create a submit method in TypeScript file and call the method in the component. So it could be something else, but I'm calling my submit. So it could be create whatever name you decide to give the function that basically submit the form to the backend. I'm not calling a backend. I'm not calling an API yet to submit the form. I'm basically just using the console that we want to show the object in my console. So the signing, what happens here is the signing component accepts input from the user. But in a real scenario, you want to capture the form value and make available for further processing outside the component. The form group directive listens to the submit event emitted by the element and then emits an ng on submit event that you can bind this callback function to. As you have a callback function, let's say you want to submit the form to the package or package API, as I said earlier. So what the submit method does is the submit method captures the value of the signing form. The signing form was created here. Yeah, this signing form, yes. So it captures that. Uses event emitter to keep the form encapsulated, provides the value outside the component. The console, the one shown on the screen, just basically logs the message to the browser console. So so yeah, so in a nutshell, or for a recap purpose, what happens here is invalidating forms using Reactive forms. So there are some really cool features that I like. So personally, I prefer to use Reactive forms rather than simply Google forms. And I'm going to share the reasons why I do that. There's a whole lot of, not just for me, but possible reasons why I would prefer to use Reactive forms than simply Google forms. And also, Angular automatically mirrors many control properties to the form using CSS classes. I use some classes to style the form control of the form. For instance, you have ng valid that checks if the form is valid, ng invalid, ng pending, ng pristine, ng untouched, touched. So these are the control status CSS classes that you could style. What this means is let's say for instance the user inputs or doesn't input, for instance, this is the ng value, ng invalid. The user inputs doesn't input the value in a particular input field, let's say the first name, and it's required. So you could use the ng valid class to style maybe the border line to make it red if the user doesn't input. Also, another cool thing is if for instance the user doesn't input a value particular field, you could prompt an error message to tell the user that this field is required. So there are a whole lot of cool things, but I actually did not cover that scope. Yeah. So yeah, another thing is you could actually disable a button. Yeah, by checking if the form is valid. What it means is in the I'm sorry, I'm going to go back there. So in the signing function, you have the first name, last name, city, email, right? So you can add valid. You can call the Angular validator function validators are required. I think I did that in my further slides. Validators are required. Sorry. So if the first name, assuming you're adding validators are required in the first name input field, if the first name is not hasn't been imputed by the user, right? You could actually just disable. So this is where disable button works. So it checks if it's actually valid based on the conditions that you've added in the form group. So you could use this required, name length, max length, and there's also emails. So there's pattern. I think I did that. I did that in my further slides. So the signing form disabled, I call it disabled attributes in the submit button. What it does is, let me see if I can show this. What it does is disabling the button until the whole conditions in the group that has been specified is it's been met. I'm just going to show an example. Yeah, so I think I'll do that after the slides. So why use reactive forms? Ease of test. On the Angular documentation, or using reactive forms is actually very easy for you to write tests based on those form inputs here, as opposed to using template-driven forms. Scalability. So if you have a very large application, or if you're building a very large application, it's advisable for you to use reactive forms, because you could want to use the forms in different components in the project. So this is where using reactive forms comes in really handy. Also, simplicity. I think it's really very, very straightforward. I think I tried using template-driven forms sometime. I found reactive forms pretty cool than using template-driven forms. So it's it. Yeah. So that's three cool reasons why you should use reactive forms. So all these that I've about, validation and validating inputs and returning error messages based on conditions that have been specified in the form group objects, validator functions, all of these and a whole lot more on these resources on the screen. You can check them out and use them. I'm very open to answer questions in whatever possible way. And so I think that's it for me. And thank you. So I have an example that's on my GitHub profile. An example of the signing form I did. So it has basically everything I talked about. What I used there was the validators that required, validators called the max length, min length for some input fields. For this example, and I did went further to talk about explain how this works on the repo. So the repo is I think simple reactive form. So if you go on my GitHub profile, you see the repo there. Thank you.
Are you ready, Gia?
Yes.
Let's do this. So you can share your screen. I'm gonna bring it up to the stream. I'm gonna leave it up to you.
Okay.
There we go. Good luck.
Got it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Angular Meetup. So I'm very happy today to talk about Zone.js. So my name is Jali. I'm a software engineer from this dot. So if you're using Angular, you may heard of a library called Zone.js. So I have been contributing to Zone.js about 4 years. Now I'm the code owner of Zone.js and also the collaborator of Angular. So today I would like to make a brief introduction about what Zone.js is and why you need Zone.js. And I will also talk about how Angular using Zone.js in the framework. So Zone.js is a library created about 6 years ago by Branford. And the idea is inspired by Dart language. So basically, Zone.js provide execution context that processes across the asynchronous tasks. So this is the main features provided by Zone.js. It provides execution context and also a set of LifeCycle hooks of asynchronous tasks, and also an error handler for the asynchronous operations. So let's take a look of those features. So what is an execution context? So execution context, this is a JavaScript concept that is an abstract that holds the information about the environment within which the current code is being executed. So let's take an example. So here is a JavaScript 101 example. So we have a function and we call it. So it will have an execution context. And we can access the context information with the JavaScript keyword, this. And of course, in JavaScript, there are several ways to run a function. So we can run this function with an object, and we can assign this test object test function to a new variable, and we can call this function directly, and we can use the apply or call to run the function, and we can also bind the context to some other object. So there are several methods to run a function. And each method will cause the context, the JavaScript keyword this, to be the different result. So the execution context in JavaScript world, and when you run a function, there will be a new execution context. And it determines the scope. That means the variables and function that the executed function can access, and also the value of the JavaScript keyword this. So this is the context definition in the JavaScript world. And also the execution context impact the stack traces. So here we have a function, and we call A equal B, B equal C, and C zero error. So we can find out the caller history, caller stacks in the stack traces. But the stack traces change if you run the function in the asynchronous way. So here we have a set timeout, and in the callback of the set timeout with similar error, and we can only find the callback information in the stack trace. The timeout information is missing. So this is kind of a missing feature of the JavaScript execution context. So the context can't be kept across functions, and especially for the asynchronous operations. So let's take a look what is the execution context that Zone.js provide. So here in this code sample, we have a zone, and we run a function inside this zone. And suddenly, besides the JavaScript default execution context this, you can imagine that we have a new execution context by zone, and let's call it zone this. And this zone this execution context, the value of zone this will be the zone here. And not only in the line 4, inside the function itself, that the zone this will be zone. And if you run a set timeout, in the callback of the set timeout, the execution context, this zone this will still be zone. So the context is being kept. So in the line 10, the execution context will be the same when this asynchronous operation being scheduled, which is line 5. So the execution context here will be the same when this set timeout is scheduled. So here. And of course, not only set timeout, but also the other asynchronous operations such as promise them. Inside the callback of promise them, the execution context zone this will still be zone. So with zone, when we run a function in the zone, so suddenly we have a new execution context zone this, and can be persist across asynchronous operations. Yeah, so this is the execution context in zone. So it looks like we have a new zone this magic keyword, and for synchronous operations, zone this will be the zone it is running in. And for asynchronous operations, zone this will be the zone when it is scheduled. So this is the most fundamental and important features that Zone.js provide. And of course, we didn't really introduce a new magic keyword, zone this. So if you want to get this new execution context by zone, you need to call zone.current to get the context. And another important feature provided Zone.js is Zone.js provide a set of interceptable LifeCycle hooks of the asynchronous task. So in those hooks, the user can write code to monitor and manage the asynchronous task status. So I will take another sample to explain what those hooks means. So here we have another very simple set timeout function call. Let's see in the JavaScript world what it will run. What is set timeout work in JavaScript VM? So here we have stack, and we have the web APIs. I will make my screen full screen to make it a little clear. So here we have the stack. Web APIs means the browser or the Node.js VM, and the macro task queue. This is the macro task queue in the VM. And in this example, we will run the set timeout in the native way, so we can ignore this zone task state. So okay, let's run this example. So first, the main stack, we run the set timeout, and the set timeout will tell the browser, okay, I want to schedule a function call in 1 second. And then the main stack finished. And after 1 second, the browser find out, okay, I have a set timeout scheduled, so I will send it to the macro task queue. And if there is no other pending task there, the JavaScript VM will move this task from the macro task queue to the main stack and run this function. So this is how set timeout work in the JavaScript VM. And because set timeout, just we see earlier, is being invoked later in the future, so the running order will not look like the code the order you write. So here we have A, B, C, D. So if you write code run A and set timeout C, D, and then run B, the final run order will look like this, because C and D is set timeout and will run later. So for example, if you want to measure the performance of A, B, C, D, so if you write code like this, it will not get the correct result, because it will only calculate the performance of A and B, and C and D will run after performance.end. So it will be run later, so you can't get the performance in this way. So just like this graph shows. So let's see if we run this set timeout code in the zone, what it will look like. So here we have a zone, and we have a name and several LifeCycle hooks defined here. And let's see how it works. So here, the code is the same. The set timeout code is same. So the difference is we run it in a zone. So first, it is the same. The main stack begin, and we have a new zone, and we use zone.run to run a function, and we call set timeout. So here, because the set timeout is inside the zone, so instead calling the native API directly, it will call a zone version of the set timeout. So before it's calling the native API, it will call the onSchedule task LifeCycle hook first. So that means it will tell the zone, okay, there is a new task being scheduled. So in these hooks, the application, the user can write their own logic to, for example, to log or something like that to manage the new task. So in the onSchedule task default built-in implementation, it will call schedule task and really call the native set timeout to the browser or Node.js VM. And because inside zone has its own task status management. So here they have the task state, and it has a property called the macro task count. And at the beginning, it will be 0, but there is a new task being scheduled. So this macro task will become 1. So that means from empty to not empty. So there is another lifecycle hooks, which is on has task. This will also be invoked. And then this set timeout is finished and main stack is clear. And after 1 second, the browser will still send this set timeout callback to the macro task queue. And there is no other pending task. The JavaScript VM will move this set timeout to the main stack. So again, because this callback is running in a zone, so instead it will instead calling this line 15 directly, it will call on invoke task lifecycle hook first. So that means there is a synchronized task callback will be invoked. That is the meaning of this on invoke task callback lifecycle hooks. So inside this lifecycle hooks, it will invoke the task and really execute this user return function. And after that, because this task has been invoked, has been consumed, so that means this macro task is done. So this macro task count will become from 1 to 0 again. So from not empty to empty again. So this on has task lifecycle hook will be invoked again, and this task count will be 0. And everything is finished. So we can see from the user perspective, the set timeout, everything is the same with the native version, with the without zone version. But during the lifecycle, during the set timeout calling, several lifecycle hooks of the zone is being invoked. So we can write some code in here to add our own logic to manage the status, to monitor and manage the status of the asynchronous operations. So not only set timeout, the promise, the other XML HTTP request, all other asynchronous operations will also invoke those hooks. So for example, if we want to measure the performance of ABCD, the demo we saw earlier, so we can write code like this. We still measure the performance start and end like this, and we will measure the asynchronous callback performance by writing our own on-invoke task lifecycle hooks like this. So in this way, the performance of AB will be measured here, and the performance of CD will be measured here. So just like this. So ABCD will all invoked in the same zone, so we can get the correct result. And also another important hook is on handle error. So on handle error will catch all the error happened in the asynchronous operation in this specified zone. So you can write a centralized async place error handler. So this is very useful feature. So how Zone.js can do this? So basically, Zone.js use monkey patch technology to implement this feature. So Zone.js monkey patch all the possible synchronous API to add those execution contexts and lifecycle hooks logic. So when should we use Zone.js? Basically, the use cases is when you want to manage or monitor the synchronized task status, you may want to use Zone.js. For example, the asynchronous test and the tracking the task, performance measuring, or you want to do something automatically when the auto task finished. For example, the auto rendering and auto release some resource, you may want to use Zone.js. So I will make some demo and examples to explain those use cases. So first one is long stack trace. So here in this sample, we have a main function. We add event listener to this button, to a button. And in the event listener, we add another event listener to another button. And finally, in the button to event listener, we throw an error. So without Zone.js, you can only find the stack traces of this zero error information. So which is not, sometimes the information is not enough because you may want more information about from the logic perspective. I want to know who is adding this zero error event listener to the button 2, and who is adding the second button to button 1. You want to find the logic traces, not only the JavaScript calling stack traces. So with Zone.js long stack trace, we can do that. I will show a demo here. So here here is the button 1, here is the button 2. When we click button 2 in the console, we found a longer version of the stack traces. And in this stack traces, we can find all the information will be printed here. So here we can find this error is caused from the line 25. In fact, it is from the 56. 56 is from here, and then to line 25 from the main function, because button 1 add the event listener, and then because 38 is because button 2 add another listener inside the button 1 event listener, and finally the error was 0 from line 43 here. So we can find a full logical traces of this error. So this is very important for debug, because in a lot of use cases, only see stack trace about this line will not tell you what is the root cause of this error. Another example is to manage the status, manage how many asynchronous operation is currently running, how many is scheduled, how many is running, how many are finished. So here is another example to just randomly create a lot of set timeout and to see their status. So here is the demo. So basically, when I click this start button, it will generate 100 of set timeout, and we can see how many scheduled, how many running, how many finished. So let's start. Okay, you can see scheduled, invoked, running, and finished. So we can also get the information of the asynchronous operation status inside the zone. Another example is the demo we showed earlier. Is the performance profiling. So basically, if in an operation there are several asynchronous tasks, you want to get the performance of them all. So you can use the onInvoke task to get the correct result. So so the demo is here. So this is simple. So basically, it will just print some number here. And in another example is resource auto-releasing. So imagine this is a Node.js example, because Zone.js not only supports browser, it also supports Node.js. So here we have a file descriptor, and we want to use this file descriptor to do some work in several asynchronous operations. And we want to release this file descriptor when all of those asynchronous tasks are done. So imagine you don't have the library such as Zone.js. You may have to write the check logic in the callback of those asynchronous operations, such as you have to, in those callback, you have to say, okay, check are all tasks done or not. If all tasks are done, I can release. If not, I have to wait the other task to be done. So it is complex and not scalable. But with Zone, you can write the release logic in a single central place, such as you can write the logic in the onHas task. So when the onHas task, the zone status become from not empty to empty, you can release the resource automatically. and the user writes the business logic code here, doesn't need to care about how to release this file descriptor at all. So another example is user action tracking. So there is a lot of extension or application want to track what user clicked, what is exactly happened in this click, and what is the performance for each step. So for example, this is there are two buttons. The first one is view button. The second one is place order button. In the view button, we have two HTTP requests, which is a synchronized HTTP request. In the order button, we have another two HTTP requests. And we want to track which button user clicked, what happened inside this click, and how many times for each step, for each HTTP call cost. So we can see in this demo, when we click view order, we have a special zone to track what the user are doing. So here we can see the zone can print out information like this. So the zone can realize, okay, a button is clicked. This button is button 1. And inside this button 1 click, there are two HTTP requests is sent, and the two HTTP requests get a response. And from this URL, and from the send to get a response, the performance is like this. And the total performance of button 1 click cost this. So it will print the whole user, what really happened inside this button click, even they are asynchronized. And we click another button, it will print another block of those information. So with this zone implementation, we can implement the features such as this user tracking very easily. And of course, we can also do some auto rendering, UI rendering with Zone. So here we have, again, we have several buttons. And in each button, we update some data. So we can see the demo here. You can see the source code here. So we have 3 buttons. And in each button, we send HTTP requests, we call set timeout to update some date here. And here we have an update task status function. You can imagine this is a render function to render this date object to the DOM. But you can see we didn't call this update task status function in either of those button even click handler. But when we click button, the UI is still updated because we have a special zone to monitor. The zone knows that even listener is also a synchronized task. So zone knows when those tasks are finished. So zone will call this update task status automatically for you. So you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to write any of those UI update render function in those event handlers. So this is exactly how kind of the mechanism how Angular work with Zone.js. And not only the application code, but also the asynchronous test can use the advantage of those asynchronous managing. Zone.js provides several asynchronous helper functions. For example, async. It will automatically make this task done when all the asynchronous operations are finished. And also fake sync. It will make your asynchronous operation, a synchronized task running synchronously. So you don't have to set a lot of timeout and wait a longer time to wait for the test finish. So everything is running synchronously. You can monitor, you can manipulate the timer with this tick function. So all those features are used in Angular. So Angular use ng-zone to tell when to trigger transaction and use async test, fake async test, those helper function in the Angular asynchronous test. And Angular also use the global error handling provided by Zone.js on handle error lifecycle hooks. Also, you can use task tracking or long stack trees zone to get more information when you debug Angular application. So this is ngzone service provided by Angular. If you call ngzone.run, everything will run in the Angular zone, and the change detection will be automatically triggered. And if you run outside Angular, it will not trigger change detection automatically. So this is basically how Zone.js work and the use cases of Zone.js and how Angular uses those features. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask here or contact me. So I'm glad to answer. So this is all my content today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gia. I see that there's no comments on questions. I believe your Twitter handle is GLE Passion. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I if with you're okay, I encourage people to reach you out on Twitter if they have further questions in the future.
No problem.
Maybe for the people that watches this the recording, and well, thank you everyone for joining us. I just want to remind everyone before we close this that there's coming the JavaScript marathon. We have also the monthly mentoring. We have the Global View Meetup. So hang tight, and if you're interested on any of those events, just go to this.media on Twitter or this.labs also on Twitter, and you'll find more information about them. And thank you, Gia, for your time, and so thank you to you, Sarah, too. And I hope to see you all in a future session. And thank you for joining us today. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.